Let's analyze why African Americans cannot gatekeep their culture in the same way native Japanese people can. This is a comment that is often made with the best of intentions, but shows a clear lack of understanding of both Japanese and African American history. Let's begin with Japan. Famously known for its isolationism, or sakoku, which translates to locked country. Japan was not open to the world until America forced the country open on July 8, 1853, for the purposes of trade. For all intents and purposes, Japan was, and still is, made by Japanese people for Japanese people. Depending on which census you look at, Japan is about 98 to 99.5% Japanese. The remaining 0.5 to 1.5% are primarily made up of other people of Asian descent, such as Korean people, Chinese people, Vietnamese people, Indian people, and so on. The smallest percentage are those from non-Asian backgrounds. This is significant because despite being forced to open in 1853 and having a permanent American military presence following their loss in World War II, Japan has always been a self-governing country. Japanese people have always set the standard for themselves because they have always had the power to do so, whether it be the Edo period and warring samurai factions, or post-Meiji Restoration, where the emperor had the final say on all matters in the country. By contrast, African Americans have never had the power to define our own destiny within America unanimously, and any attempt to do so has always been met with brutal resistance, including but not limited to redlining, Jim Crow, and the bombing of Black Wall Street. The list goes on and on and on. This argument would work if African Americans made up a vast majority of America and held every powerful position available to a person within a country. But then we wouldn't be American, because our nationality is a consequence of the transatlantic slave trade. While the transatlantic slave trade was happening, Japan continued to isolate itself. They were drinking their tea, having their civil wars, celebrating Oda Nobunaga, or praying to Amaterasu for his downfall. You know, Japanese things. When native Japanese people create culture, specifically music, they are not showing it to a non-Japanese A&R. They are not burdened with the reality of having their mission, their music shelved because a non-Japanese executive just doesn't get it. How many African Americans own their masters? How many African Americans are CEOs of record labels? African American rap is not tailored to a foreign audience. To argue that African American culture has diminished in pursuit of foreign money is ludicrous. Canadian, British, and African rappers come to America in pursuit of money, fame, and accolades, not the other way around. The gatekeepers of Japanese culture are and always have been Japanese people. From copyright laws to boardrooms to consumers, Japan has near complete control over their culture because the country has remained so homogenous, and they've had the privilege of creating these safeguards that African Americans never had to begin with. Rap, like many African American art forms, was born out of struggle. It is the rhythm and poetry of our lives under siege. African American culture by nature is one of resistance. Japanese culture is one of isolation, exclusion, and preservation. The argument that African Americans should gatekeep their culture in the same vein that Japanese people gatekeep their culture crumbles upon itself once you familiarize yourself with the history of both cultures. It is theoretically impossible for African Americans to gatekeep their culture in the same way Japanese people gatekeep their culture, when so often African Americans do not hold the means of distributing their culture and controlling their image. Lest we forget, America has spent the past year in fierce debate over whether or not African Americans can be country, or why they are constantly denoted as urban. The trials and tribulations African Americans face are a far cry from the inner machinations of Japanese culture. That's not to say Japan doesn't have its own challenges, but 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be 2 Japanese people sitting across from one another. In America, African Americans are often the fewest represented in the room, if they're in the room at all. In conclusion, while African Americans both create and drive culture, they do not currently hold the reins of their culture. And when the vast majority of African American hip-hop fans are getting their news primarily from hip-hop blogs that are almost exclusively run by non-black individuals who are making millions of dollars off the attention of African Americans, it's safe to say the ship to gatekeep African American culture has sailed. Personally, I'm of the opinion that African Americans should gatekeep their culture to a far greater extent than they currently do, but because they lack the power to do so, it has to start small and be consistent. Stop following individuals who take from the culture and don't give back. Follow credible news sources and actual journalists instead of big font, red letters, thinking emoji. And stop inviting everyone to that goddamn metaphorical cookout. We're African American, not the United Nations. We don't have to invite everyone.